Hi there, my name's Travel Nurse Gary. I'm your new traveler. I've never been here to Dallas, Texas before, but hey, listen, I was just wondering why I'm being floated med-surg. I'm an ICU nurse.
Well, Gary, what's your contract say?
It says first to float.
Well then, have fun in med-surg.
What's up, you guys, and welcome to the Everything Travel Nurse Show. I'm your host, Travel Nurse Gary, and listen, this week we're talking about the ICU. They've closed it down where I'm at. I'm a med-surg nurse now. I'm going to talk about it. Second thing I'm going to talk about is all the experiences that I've had as a travel nurse over the last 4.5 years, 7 states, and all the floating that I've done. I'm going to explain floating as a travel nurse for you so you can learn about that. Third thing I'm going to talk about is one time I actually did say no to a company and I won. I actually won against the company. And my travel agency helped me win that battle. We billed them out for those hours worked. I'm going to explain that all to you in this week's video. But before we get to this week's video, if you could please subscribe, it really helps out the channel. Leave a comment down below. Like the button. All my videos are shot in 4K. And hey, one more question for you before we get started.
Do you trust me?
So I'm located at a really small hospital, and they actually did close down the ICU. So for the last 3 weeks, I've been just working in the med-surg, and I've always actually been an ICU nurse, so it's a brand new experience for me working in the med-surg. And as a 4-year traveler, it's just a normal everyday thing to be floated. I've been floated to so many units like over the last 4.5 years that it's a normal thing to be floated down to a different unit, and it's just adapt and evolve. That's one of the best strategies that you have as a travel nurse, is just you adapt to wherever you're going, and you're just like, where am I going now? Where am I going today? What am I doing now? What do you want? And that's just your mentality. Now, during your first week of orientation, a travel nurse is that you're going to probably be at the main campus, or you're going to be at an education center, and it's expected of you during your first week to go travel to that location. So make sure that during your first week of travel nursing, you always have a car. That way you can drive to that location or have access to getting to that location during that first week. So the way I want to write like this flow policy and how to explain it is that my current campus, it's a really small campus, and there's only one hospital, and I can be floated within that hospital system into multiple units. So I'm currently contracted in the ICU. I can be floated to med-surg, which is where I've been for the last 3 weeks. And then I also can be floated to long-term care as a nurse aide. I also can be floated to like the pediatric OB unit as a nurse aide. And I can also be floated to the ER to take ICU holds. So that's pretty normal, and that's something that you should always stop and think, like, I can be floated pretty much anywhere. I've never been to an ER, and I'd actually never been to an ER as a nurse either until I became a travel nurse. So that's something that's a skill that you're just going to pick up as a travel nurse, is the master of floating, and it's just going to be one of your best skill sets. You'd be like, show up to a unit, you'd be like, what do I got? Where do you need? Where am I going? All right, where's the crash cart? That get like a 2-minute orientation, and you just show up and you own it. And I've gone to units where I've never even been, and I've just taken 5 patients in a med-surg and just owned it. It was no big deal. And that's just one of your skill sets that you're going to create as a travel nurse, is the master floater. Alright, so I as a travel nurse have traveled throughout like 7 US states, and so I've traveled through multiple hospitals, and it was written in the contract that I could be floated to Campus A, Campus B, Campus C, and I had no problem with that. I actually really enjoyed that, and going to all the different hospitals and the different units, and wherever they needed me to go, I was always the first one to float, so I ended up always floating in like the home unit that I would be in. Sometimes I wouldn't even be at that hospital for 2-3 weeks at a time. So whenever you can float to multiple campuses, yeah, you're going to get floated, and make sure that you have that transport. Oh, and I actually did have one contract as well where I never even went into the unit where I was contracted out. I went down to the COVID wing. So make sure you watch out for that, because they will float you, and that's something that you have to be comfortable with as a travel nurse. I remember I got a call from one of the nurse managers. She called me up and said, "Hey, listen, travel nurse Gary, we're going to float you. We're going to float you to another campus an hour and 20 minutes away in an area that is notorious for heavy traffic." And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, yeah, I don't have a car. It's going to be like $250 Uber. And on my contract, it specifically says that, like, I'm supposed to be at this campus. This is my campus. It doesn't say anything about second campus. And so I just kind of kept the honest truth with her in a very respectful way and said, "Hey, listen, I understand it's your guys' float policy that the travelers are the first to float, but in my contract, whoever wrote the contract, has said that I'm supposed to be here at campus A. I'm not going an hour and a half to campus B, and I understand, like, you can ask me, but you can't force me to go to this place, and I'm going to respectfully decline." But because it was part of their policy that the travelers had to be floated, and they only had enough patients to keep, their staff there, they said, "Listen, we're gonna write you up, and what we're going to do is we're going to say you're refusing." And so when my company called me up and said, "Hey, listen, they said that you were refusing to float." I'm like, "Yeah, they tried to float me to another hospital an hour and 20 minutes away. Like, I'm not going there. In my contract, it specifically says I'm here at campus A. I'm not going to campus B." And so the company was like, "Well, that doesn't make any sense." And so my company proceeded to bill them out for the full 12 hours that they tried to cancel me. And that's one reason why I love travel nursing, is because, like, the hospitals just sometimes think that they can just do whatever they want. And I'm telling you that, like, they can't just do whatever they want. Like, I'm privately contracted. My company was arbitrary and said, "No, we're billing you out. That's the way it is. You can't commit fraud. That's the contract. That's the way it is." And that's another reason why you need to understand your contract, because nurse managers are not always people who understand how your contract is going to be written and dictates what you can and can't do. And when they try and push you to go do something that is a breach of your contract, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, okay? They were in the wrong. We billed them out and let them know that they were in the wrong, and they changed, like, the way that their contracts were written after that, because I went and followed up with the new travel nurses to ask them, like, "How's your contract written?" And they were written differently so that they could go to different campuses, but my contract wasn't written that way. So don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Hey, listen, you guys, it's a pretty short episode this week. Floating is just something that, as a travel nurse, you just got to get used to. Adaptability is your strongest strength as a travel nurse, and that's something that you just get so used to doing. So understand that you will float as a travel nurse. It's the way it is. That's all we've got for this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice day.